Testing, testing. I can hear you. Yeah, I don't think I can share my screen yet. Noise. Yeah, I only have like one monitor, so. uh, to a VS Code. Yeah. Yeah, I was just gonna switch windows pretty much. Like I had like a couple of scenes set up, but then I was like, You know what? I'm just gonna do the whole screen." It was still good though, man. Yeah. Right? Yeah. It was good. It was good. Okay. 7:03. Yep. Yep. Yeah, I think I'll get started pretty soon here. Okay, I'll give it 30 seconds or so. Give it one more minute here. Okay, actually, I guess I'll just get started. Um, Hello, everyone. I'm Adam Holtman. I'm a fourth year software engineering student here at UVic, and I'm in VikeLabs. I'm on the degree planner team. Um, I'm mostly doing front end work on the team so far, but I do have some experience in the back end. Anyways, so I'm gonna be teaching you about how to test your React applications here, and we're going to be using Jest and RTL, which is React Testing Library. Um, so this is the overall layout of the workshop I have planned here. So it's just it's sort of loose. Maybe less time in QA. Also, speaking of Q&A, since there's not many people, um, those of you in the Discord or in YouTube chat, you can just feel free to pop your questions in there. And I will answer them on the spot or as soon as I hear or see them, because there probably won't be many interruptions. So, yeah, so feel free to ask any questions and along the way if you're confused. So we're going to get started with the first section here. So actually, I'll just post this in um, the YouTube chat here. That's me. And I'll post it in Discord as well. Okay, so what we want to do here is, oh, I actually, hold on. New window. Okay, just gonna actually open a folder. Okay, dev, new folder, workshop. So just gonna open this. So we're gonna clone the repository first here. Oh, you want to git clone, then paste the git link. So that'll clone the repository, cd into the project, and then npmi to install the dependencies. You all probably know this fairly well. So we'll just leave that. Come back to the presentation here. Okay. So let's. Okay, one moment here. Just gonna mute because I'm hearing myself. Okay, there we go. So what is testing? So testing is something we do to assure quality in our software applications. It's to verify we're getting the desired software behavior, um, and there it can be either manual or automated. By manual, I mean some person just going through and manually clicking through an application or something. But usually it's automated, which is we write automated tests, which are in the form of arrange, act, and then assert. So we set up the test, any variables or data we need, and then we act. We do some sort of action on the piece of software that we're testing, and then we're evaluating to see if the action had the desired behavior. If it did not, then it means that the test failed, obviously. Um, and there are many types. Unit tests are more isolated, and they're smaller. Integration tests are with more than one pieces, like more than one function or component working together, and end to end is usually like the whole software system. But why do we test? There are lots of reasons why we test. Obviously, quality assurance is a big one. We want quality software, but to get there, it also helps to find and fix bugs early on before they become a big problem. And for onboarding devs, um, the tests can sort of act as some sort of documentation because they describe what the software should do, um, given certain inputs. And as we will see later, the titles of the tests also describe what the software is. Um, and as we might see later, the cleaner code. So if you have spaghetti code, obviously it'll be a lot harder to write tests for those. So that gives some incentive to write clean and maintainable code. Um, for all these reasons, it's an industry standard, so it's very useful as a junior developer or someone starting out to learn to test because it'll be useful in the career. Of course, the drawbacks are that it takes time. It could even take as much time as or more as developing the actual software. Um, And if you're using some sort of continuous integration system, it takes up resources, so it also costs money on that front as well. Um, yeah, exactly. Je suis Ahmed spaghetti code. So anyways, React testing. So in this case, some people call them unit tests or integration tests. I would call it more integration tests, um, since you're involving multiple parts of the code. Um, and it and what we do is we render a DOM, and we use that for all the tests. And in that we mimic user interaction. And in terms of tools, Jest is a good framework from Facebook, and React Testing Library is a good library to help out with that. Um, so I'll just run through these real quick here. If you don't know, Jest is a testing framework from Facebook, as I said. It runs the tests in parallel to save time. Um, there's usually no config involved in setting it up, and it comes pre-packaged in with Create React App as well. Um, and the API is pretty good, and it allows you to mock functions or modules in order to more effectively unit test and isolate pieces of code. And so as we see here, just a simple example, uh, test is a function. It defines the actual test. So the first argument here is the title. It describes what the test is doing. Um, so it adds 1 plus 2 to equal 3. And the second parameter is the actual test. So it's an arrow function, an anonymous function here, where we are calling expect, and then the sum function that we are testing on 1 and 2, and then uh, by chain here we're expecting it to be 3. So it's pretty intuitive in terms of this. But let's go to React Testing Library here. This one allows you to actually render. It's more suited for React. It allows you to render query, interact with the DOM, which allows you to simulate user interaction pretty effectively. Um, and it needs to be used with testing framework because it's not a framework, it's just a library, but it's usually used with Jest. So we just went over. So this is a simple example. Here we see a Jest test, and here we are using the render method to render a component in a question that's being tested. We're using the fire event to click a certain button that we get by querying the text to load, and then we're evaluating how that went down here. Um, so we'll see many examples of this later. Yeah, so that being said, I'm actually just going to jump straight over there. So it should be about done. Yeah, nice. So ignore that. So here I'm just going to npm start to start the application, and just going to open this and do npm test, but this won't save much for now. So it's starting the development server, and just gonna split into here for now. Okay, here it is, my beautiful application. As you see, this is just hard coded in. Here, I'll just open up app.tsx here. So as we see, has a nav bar, just one child, which is at home, and then it's rendering um, the rest, which is contained in the component home here. And see, passing in a hard-coded name. And then for the components here's the home component. Uh, so this is, it has two children, list items, and the text form. So this is the text form, and the list items would be down here, but there aren't any yet, obviously. And it also has this Kanye time button. That does something very special. But yes, so um, I'll actually just show you a simple example. We click this. Winning is the only option. Yes, true. And so we can also add our own. This is sort of like a glorified to-do app, you could say. True Kanye. So adds that in there. It doesn't add anything if you click submit. It's gonna add more. Me too. Anyways, so now we actually, I want to look at, I'm going to press A on this testing um, terminal. So just this entire app only has this test, which pretty much came pre. Okay, I think my mic disconnected. I'm sorry about that. Um, Thank you, Ahmed, for letting me know. Anyways, so I'm not, I forget where that disconnected, but um, yeah, so it's rendering the app, which is imported from app, and um, so it's using screen from React testing library, and it's querying for a regular expression with home, which it'll be looking for something like that. And this passes, it's expecting that node to be in the document, which obviously it is, um, if it even finds it here. But we're gonna start off by improving this a little bit. Jest comes with something called describe, which sort of helps you organize your tests. So I'm gonna title this app component. Then just like another test, I'm just gonna pass it an anonymous function. Just gonna copy and paste this test into here. Also, side note, it is an alias for test, so these are interchangeable. They do exactly the same thing. Yeah, so now we see if we rerun it, um, it'll it'll have it'll be grouped with app component, which is the title we gave it. So if there are multiple tests in here, they'll all be grouped under app component, which is good. Also, with describe, or with Jest, I mean in general, it does have hooks such as after each. We pass this another anonymous function, and actually here I'll want this runs after each test. So this this will run whatever is in here after this test, And if there's a second test, it'll run it after that test as well. So good one. It's good to clean up after tests, so the tests don't run into each other, because that could produce behavior that's hard to debug. Um, so we'll say that, but I'm not going to be doing too much with this app test. I'm probably just going to move straight into these components here. So a good file structure to have is to have your tests close to the files that they are testing. So in this case, I think it would be good to have the tests have their own folder. So I'm going to do underscore tests underscore, and then I'm going to define maybe list item dot test dot tsx, let's say. So that creates this folder tests, and it has the test file for list item. And each of these is a list item. So just gonna expand this. Gonna move this into here. It's good to have um, the test file and the other and the file that's being tested on the same screen here. Very useful. I'm just gonna pretty much just copy paste and then change what we need to change. Um, so I'm going to import list item. There we go. List item. List item. I guess I could have refactored this maybe, but that's okay. And list item takes a prop called text, which is what it will be displaying. So just gonna pass it something to satisfy it for now. We'll come back to that. We'll also want to change the describe title as well. Renders proper text. So in terms of the titles, there's a few ways you can do it. It really depends on your preference or your team's preference. I guess just ask your team or your team lead, but some people say should render proper text. Some may say renders proper text, or something of that sort. It doesn't matter. It's just up to the team or the person. But anyways, so we're rendering a list item here. Let's say we want. Let's see. What might we want to do? So let's say we have. Let's define. Oh, I gotta change my spacing here. Okay. Let's say we have mock text, for example. Let's say test. So let's pass that into the render. So now it should render this text. So that's the behavior we want. So now we should test for that. The render method from React testing library, it returns many utility functions that we can exploit here. It exports all of these. This is, of course, as it sounds, the base element. These are queries. These are all very similar but slightly different. We can get into that a little bit later. But let's see. We'll just do get by text for now. Get by text. So then we'll use this. Do get by text mock text. So it will search the DOM for this, and if it finds it, then it'll actually return it'll actually return the a reference to the element. But if it doesn't find it, then it'll throw an error. So usually we'd do expect or something in here, but actually in this case, we're safe to just not do that. So if we save that, as we see here, runs the test, it passes. That's good news. And so now I'm just gonna introduce another a testing library thing here. So there are things called snapshots. So it's exactly what it sounds like. It takes a snapshot of the certain DOM, and then on subsequent tests, it compares that snapshot, which it saves. Sorry, I'm just gonna pass in this good old copy paste, eh? Okay, base element. Right, so that doesn't need to be there, it's empty. So it compares it with the snapshot it took earlier, but on the first run, it'll just take the snapshot pretty much. So we're going to expect the base element to match snapshot. Okay, so that's, if we run this, if we save, it'll run, and it'll say one snapshot origin from one test suite there, and it creates this folder in the tests folder called snapshots. As we see, just looks like our list item component here. So this helps speed up testing, but it also it comes with some drawbacks. Like if you do a major refactoring, then you're gonna have to update a lot of snapshots or something. But that's something for you to consider. Just gonna remove that unused import there. So we can move away from that. Okay, sorry. I don't know why my mic keeps cutting out. Um, so yeah, that's annoying. Okay, so snapshot. So I added this attribute data test ID of list item. It makes querying for these. Uh, it makes these queries a lot easier. If it's a complicated component or something, then you could just query by data test ID, and it's great. We'll see that later. But yeah, as we see, since we changed the actual component here, the snapshot was complaining because we added this. So if we just hit the letter U, it'll tell it to update the snapshot. As we see, one snapshot updated. So that's good. I'm actually going to move away from this test suite now. Let's create another one, actually. Maybe one for text form test. Okay, so yeah, as you could probably guess, all the tests need to have this .test in between. So copy paste that. that over, organize this a little bit. Okay. Text form. We can import text form here. Nice. Cannot. Okay. Nice. Oops. Just gonna convert it over real quick. Actually, I guess we'll do another snapshot for the text form as well. But it takes in 3 props here. It takes in text, which is a string, and then 2 callback functions, which live in the home component, as we see here. But we'll get to that a bit later. For now, I think we'll just pass in uh, Jest functions, which are mocks. So here, I'll just write it out here for now. Submit equals Jest.function. Basically, this is a function. It replaces handle submit. So if this is called while testing, it'll replace it with the Jest function, which by default returns undefined. But inside of here, we can define an implementation, but that is not necessary right now. So then we'll also need handle change. Do the same for that Jest.function. So that is not complaint anymore. Actually gonna copy paste this thing to this line. Save. Yeah. Whoops. Don't want that. Okay. So. Okay. Yeah. So here we need to fix this test, but this test, as we see, it wrote a snapshot. So what sort of tests do we want? We probably want to see if it triggers the handle change function when you type, or if it calls the handle submit function when you submit. Those are 2 basic tests we can do that will be very useful. Okay, so let's get right into that then. I'm just gonna define handle. I'll do the handle change one first, I guess. I'm gonna define that as a Jest function down here, so we can use it lower down in the test. So I'll change this name. Let's say it should, or it calls handle change function when input changes. It's a bit of a lengthy explanation, but it doesn't really matter. So let's render this. So it renders a text form, and we want to pass in our handle change here so that it can actually call this one when we test, which we will check lower down. So Jest allows you to check if a Jest function has been called, or has been called how many times, or with certain parameters or certain arguments. So basically what we can do down here, we can say expect handle change. So expect is a function of Jest. Then we're going to chain with more Jest here. Let's say to have been called times 1. So this is saying we're expecting it to have been called 1 time from some action that we have here. Don't know why. Oh, I gotta fix this. That's no good. Okay. So basically, we want to change the text form in this area, so it would call handle change this callback. So how we can do that using React testing library. It has something called fire event. Okay, dot click. So, or actually, I don't think click will work in this case. We'll say change. So this is going to change an element. In this case, it'll be the input element, which we will need to get. So as you can see, it takes in an element in the form of a document node element or window. We'll need that. So I'm just going to define that above it, actually. We'll call it input. Const in, right, that was const input. So you're going to give it a type here, HTML input element, because I'm using TypeScript, but this part's not necessary if you're using JavaScript, of course. So get by test ID. So this is where this comes in. We'll actually want to query for a test ID, or at least, well, that's what I want to do. There are a few ways of querying for this certain element, but I'm actually, sorry, I was just checking my mic. Okay, so actually I'm gonna add data test ID equals, what do you call it? Maybe text dash input. So we'll save that, and then we'll have to update the snapshot, but I'll do that now. Press U on the terminal. So we're gonna query by text input. So it's gonna find this element, and actually TypeScript might complain. Oh wait, true. So this is also exported. This is returned by the render method. There we go. So TypeScript is complaining about this. So actually, I'm just gonna straight up cast it to an input element because at least right now I'm completely sure. You could have a type guard or something in here if you want, but I'm just gonna cast it. So anyways, so we're gonna enact a change event on this input, and we'll just want to enter some sort of new value. So how this is done, so we'll say target and then value. Then pretty much anything for the value, anything. Because this text won't actually matter lower down. We won't be testing for this in this test here. We'll just sort of test if it called the handle change callback. So as you can see, it did since it passed. So that's good. We can also do the same for handle submit. So it'll be quick to just copy paste in the same describe block. Calls submit, sorry, handle submit, I mean. When submitting, let's say. So submit, sorry, handle submit. We want this available. Guess I could have refactored that, but that's okay. Oh wait, no. So we want that in there. Maybe just have a just function here. It doesn't really matter. So we'll do the same thing, except we want to submit. So fire event has a submit action, but we won't want to be firing that on the input element. That's not gonna work, of course, or at least we shouldn't do that. So we're actually gonna just fire it on the form as a whole. So I'm actually just gonna have another test ID. This is just for simplicity's sake right now. Also, it could be good practice depending on what your team likes. But so get by test ID, and then the test ID is form. So of course one downside of this is if this somehow changes, then you'll have to go back and change all of these in the tests, or maybe you could have this as a constant, as a global constant as well. But that's beside the point. I'm gonna press U again here on the terminal just to update the snapshots so we see that passed. So that's nice. So it's submitted, and then it expect handle submit callback to be called. It's called once. We're not going to check the arguments because that is too much work for this right now. So I'm just going to move to testing the home component. So the overall, the parent component of all of this. So I'm going to treat this more like a user now, because those were not too much like a user, but this is more like a user because I'm going to be clicking things, etc. So just going to declare a home.test.tsx. So this will be our test for the home. Moves over here. Okay. Just gonna remove these for now. And again, just import home. Okay. Is my mic on? Yeah, okay. So home. So home component. See matches. We'll have a snapshot for this as well. Might as well, eh? Sorry, my mic went again. Don't know why it's doing that. So we know it takes one prop name. Just save that now. Looks good. This is extraneous right now, this import. So we'll save, it'll reload. Nice, so it wrote the snapshot. Nice. Okay, so what we actually want is, so as you can see in here, in the home component, it has two state hooks, and it has an asynchronous function called insert quote, which calls another asynchronous a get Kanye quote, and then after that it appends it to the text list state. So, but we don't want it to be calling the API. We don't want this get Kanye quote function to be actually calling a Kanye rest. Not a good idea in testing for a lot of reasons. It'll slow it down and it'll be spamming the API, which is not desirable, at least for them. So what another feature of Jest is to mock. So we're actually going to mock get Kanye quote. So how we can do that, it's very easy with Jest. We'll do jest.mock, and then the path to the file or the module. This is the module that we'll want to mock. So I think the relative path is // and then API / quote. And then so that'll mock it, but if we want to define behavior, we want sort of anonymous function like thing here where we can define get Kanye quote. So this has to match the exported named function here, get Kanye quote. then we can define what it is. So we'll just say it's a just function, I suppose. So now in these tests, if it ever calls getConnie quote, it's going to replace that call with just function, which will just return undefined. But as we will see lower down, we can actually set what implementation we want for this function. So that will make testing a lot easier. So let's actually just start with, or actually, before we continue, I'm actually going to enable test coverage for these tests, which gives us a helpful indication of course, how much of the application we've tested. You will see. So I'm actually going to edit the in package.json. I'm going to edit the test script to be coverage. I'm actually also include the flag watch all. So that I saved that. Now I'm going to rerun npm test. So as you can see, it calls test with those flags, and when this completes, it tells us how much of the application we've covered, which is a good, helpful thing at a glance. So the percent of statements, the percent of the conditional branches, the percent of the functions and of the lines, and which lines are not covered by the tests. So this is pretty good. Also, one tool I like to have is if we open up, see, it generated this coverage folder. So if we open that up, go to the index, actually has a handy little web page here, which it displays it in a much more pretty way. So if we go, for example, into source components, then go into our, let's say, our list item, it says it's all covered. This is not really covered. But if we go to home, we can see these are the stats. So this, so far in the test, these lines were covered twice, and this part was not covered at all. But we can change that, of course. We can write more tests to make sure the coverage goes up. So all the red here is what we have not covered in our tests. This is a good handy tool to sort of up your coverage pretty much, which of course is not the end-all be-all of testing, but it's a good indicator of how effective your tests are. Okay, so just going to quickly write out some tests here. So we'll want to, as we see, whoops, so we'll see, we'll want to sort of have these be called. So what we can do is to submit a text form or something. So actually I'm going to just define a nested describe for the text form, for actually the submitting of the text form. Or I guess I could do it for just the text form. That's also okay. I better hurry up here, eh? Okay, so we can add a test that, let's say it adds text to list when full text is submitted, because as we see here, whoops, submit. So it checks the length of the text before it adds it, and if it's 0, then it just falls through pretty much. So we want to test that behavior. So what we can do is to So yeah, of course we'll want to render. So render home with name doesn't really matter right now. Whoops. So close that. We'll want to get some of those returned utility functions, but let's see, what do we want? We want to get input and change it. Then we'll want to change it and submit. Then we want to test if list updated, pretty much. So that's our test plan for this. So for changing it, we'll want to again get the input element. I'm actually just gonna straight up copy this. Don't want to rewrite it. Yeah, for that, need get test by ID. So we'll get that from the render. And then let's see, what can we do? Oh yeah, we'll actually just fire event.change that input, pass an input, and then pass in again the target, and then the value of the new input. Let's see. We'll actually define this value at the beginning of the test. So let's say const mock input val equals test. Oh, okay, sorry, it went out again. Okay, so here we go. Pass that into there, so it'll change to this. And then after that, we'll want to submit it. So fire event.submit, that'll submit the form. Get by test ID again, get the form. So it'll get the form element and then fire the submit event. So that should update this list. So we'll actually want to test for that, of course. So we'll do test list items equals. I'm actually going to use a different query function here called find all by text. So this will find multiple instances of whatever we pass in, and it's asynchronous, so we need a wait in here, which means we need this test to be asynchronous as well. And we'll need to also get that from the render method. So there we go. Then, right, so we'll want to search for mock input val. We actually don't need to find multiple. So in this case, we'll actually find by text. We'll make someone else reading the test less confused. So we'll do our classic expect here. So we're going to expect list items, and then dot to have length. Since it's an array, it's gonna. Oh, actually, it's not going to be an array. So to be truthy. So test fits good. So if it's not truthy, then this means that this did not find the new list item. So yeah, okay. So just gonna rerun this. We're running out of time here. I'm just gonna So I'll continue until it's finished, but if you need to go at 8, then feel free. It's going to probably take an extra 15 minutes. Um, I'll, I'd also like to say that VikeLabs is looking for people to do these workshops. So if you have some knowledge about some aspect of software development and you want to share it, then contact some admin of VikeLabs, and they'd be happy to set you up. Okay, so let's get back to this. So we'll want to test if multiple entries works here too. So in this case, we will want find all by text. Okay, find all by text. And then I'm just going to expand this out because that can be hard to read. Sorry about that. Okay. So in this case, it will, oh, I actually rename this as well, list item. So it's not confusing. So this will be an array of whatever it finds. But we actually probably shouldn't search by text here. We're gonna actually find all by test ID of, I forget, what was it? List item. List item. Okay, it was list item was the test ID there. So I'm gonna search by that. I'm actually gonna expand this because we don't really need to see it anymore now. Okay, so it's gonna search for the test ID. There we go. Get that. So we'll want to test the length to have length 2 because we're gonna actually have a second one in here. Adds multiple texts to list when full text is submitted. Okay, so or I guess multiple entries, that makes more sense. Okay, so basically gonna copy paste this. The actual text doesn't really matter, it could be the same thing. So we should expect it to have length 2, which it does. Passes, that's nice. So I think, let's see. I'm actually going to test for this case when the length is 0, and then that'll be our last test for the text form. I'm going to copy paste this, change it up here. Say it does nothing when empty text. Oh, sorry, one moment. Okay, an empty text. Sorry, I'm just checking the mic there. Okay, it does nothing when empty text is submitted, let's say. Don't really need this. Let's see. We will need this. This value will be just an empty string. This is not needed. Let's see. Yeah. So I'm unsure if this will throw an error if this is empty. Yeah. So we'll want to actually use. I'll just show you another query function which returns null if it doesn't find anything. I'll also use by role just to switch it up here. Or when you're actually writing tests for a team or something, you should keep it consistent just so it's more readable, but I'm just going to give you a little variety here. So the role is called list item, and we're going to get query by role from the render method here. So we're going to actually expect list items to be null. that should pass since that's an empty string. Nice. Okay, everything passes. That's all well and good. So, as we can see, our home now is 81% statement coverage, branch coverage 100%, 66% functions, and these certain lines, as we will see reflected in here. If we refresh, there we go. Now this insert quote, we will now just write a test for that. I'm actually gonna add another describe block here, just keep it organized. Let's see, what should we call this? We just call it Kanye time button. Okay. Oh, sorry. I should also. Actually, no, that's all good. So I'm just gonna test if it can add a quote to the list. So just gonna copy this again. It adds quote to list. So we're actually going to get into the API calls here, and the calls to the mocked function. So this is exciting stuff. Okay, I'm just gonna keep on copying some stuff because really save time here. By test ID, might not use that. We'll see. Okay, so I'm actually gonna define const Kanye button just so we can use it, and it's for readability. So gonna use get by role here. Get by role button. So we're looking for a button which has the name. Just gonna use some regex here. Okay, there we go. So it has the name Kanye time, as we see. Also, one side note, it's useful. There's certain Chrome tools and stuff. Shay from Degree Planner showed me this one, but you can select and it'll help you select a query. So that's basically what we're doing here. Just a side note. So we have a variable here, which is a reference sort of to the element that this selects. So it's this button. Okay, so we're gonna do fire event click Kanye button. There we go. So it's gonna click the button, and then what we want to do is maybe test. Let's do the list items again. We'll do right. So I think we will want to have this mock have a certain implementation. So it returns a certain value. So what we can do is have this, have get Kanye quote dot mock return value once. So this will replace the return value if this is called with whatever's in here, and it'll do that once, and then after that it'll return to just a normal undefined return of the just function. So guess we want it to return. Let's actually declare that mock quote equals I am the best. Okay. Mock quote. So it will, TypeScript is complaining now. Property mock return value once does not exist on this type. So that's fair enough, I guess. We'll cast this as well. So we'll have Connie West quote as jest.mock. I guess we'll just say any here, and then that should be good. Right, so this is incomplete. Whoops, so that'll fail. So now we can complete this. I'm just using a variety of different selectors here just to give you a feel for it, but find all by text. This is what we used a bit earlier. We're going to find mock quote. We can also get by a test ID, but just going to be doing this, I guess. Whoops. Actually, yeah. I think to save time, I'm just going to combine this single add quote to add multiple quotes. Just by the way. Usually you want them as separate tests, so that they're more independent, but that's okay. Just gotta save some time here. So in this case, we'll actually want to wait for this first item to show up until we click it again. So I'll just outline it, wait for first list item. Then we want to click for second time. Then sort of evaluate success. Okay. So how we can wait for the first list item is provided by React Testing Library. They have something called wait for. Pass it a function here. So it will wait for this to be true. So expect, we'll say query all by test. I guess we do query by test ID, but doesn't particularly matter. I guess so. Query by test ID. So we don't want to get this from the import, because if we get it directly from the render method, then it will already have the document of this attached to it, which just makes the code simpler. Right, so the test ID. We'll say list item. We're looking for a list item. So we're waiting for this dot not dot, how dare you, dot not, oh, this, are the brackets off? Yes, okay, dot not dot to be null. So it's waiting for this to not be null. If it doesn't find it, then it will be null. So it's going to wait for that to happen, and that will mean the first list item is there. Then we can click it for a second time. Just gonna copy this, paste. Just gonna maybe 2 or something. Okay, so this will add a second mock quote. So I think then we will actually wait for this as well. Or yeah, we'll wait for, okay, we'll use this await again, except we'll wait for query all by test ID list item. Also, again, get that from the render method. Dot to have length 2. Okay. So it's going to wait for the second one to show up, and so the list, So there'll be two elements with this ID, and at that point it should be good. And then just as a last check, we're just going to check that the get Kanye quote dot, we expect that to have been called times 2 for each click. We can use this in the expect a function because this is a mocked function. It's a jest function. If it was just a straight import, we could not, this could not be done. So I'm going to call that done for that test. So the coverage is 100% across the board. Have we covered all of the cases? I'm sure we could add more tests to make it more robust, but in the interest of time, I'm gonna cut that part out, I guess. All right, so we now have tests for each of these components. We have snapshots in this folder for each of them. I'm actually just gonna test. I'm gonna unit test this quote.ts file, which is the actual call to Kanye REST. So this will be quick. I'm gonna do the same, make a folder, tests, just be consistent. Quote.test.ts. Oh, my bad. That didn't go right. There we go. That worked. Okay. So we'll just want to mock Axios so it doesn't actually call this again. So it doesn't spam or anything. We'll also so we'll want to check for these cases, but okay, it's been 15 minutes. This will take 5 minutes if you want to stick around. But yeah, so this will be a straight up unit test. So I'm just going to start out by describe quote, or yeah, I'm going to describe quote, because that's the file name or the module name. But I'm not going to do much in there. This is more is if there are multiple functions in this file, but whoops, that's already there. Okay, so just gonna describe that. Okay, okay, right. So I'm just gonna import star or just gonna import the function here. There we go. So describe Kanye quote. Okay, so our first test will say it returns quote. Say correct quote, guess, but we're going to be mocking the Axios implementation. So how we can do that is import Axios. By the way, Axios, as you could probably see, it's a way to query, get and post REST APIs, possibly other protocols, but okay. So we're going to import Axios, and then we can do just.mock Axios. That will make sure that the module is mocked, so it will not actually call any endpoints unless we explicitly say so, but we will not be doing that. Then just label this mocks. Just to organize it a bit, we can do const. So we'll define mocked Axios for use in the tests. say that's Axios as Jest. This is more for TypeScript, but mocked type of Axios. So this is more for TypeScript. Const placeholder equals. So this is the placeholder that we use in here. I guess we could make this a variable and export that if we want, and then import it here. But this is just still a shortcut. Okay. Let's see, what could we do here? Not sure. Maybe I just mocked. Oh, sorry about that. It's mocked with an ED. A little typo there. Okay. Okay, so it corrects. So we want to define a fake response to test against. We'll say data. I already know this format, but if you didn't, then you could just look at this or Axios or something. But also here we're enforcing that that the data JSON is gonna be quote have a quote key. We'll just say call it test quote. So data, and then I'm gonna have a status which will be 200 here. So that's the fake response. Then we do mocked axios.get. So this is again mocked function from Jest. Resolved value fake response. Okay, so it's gonna get that fake response, and so when we actually call, oh right, this should be asynchronous, this test function. When we actually call get Kanye quote, that's gonna hopefully return the fake response quote. So that should work. Let's just see. Okay, so that passed. Nice. As we see, that was 70% of the statements, but as we can see in this reporter, I'm missing this error case from this if statement as well as this one. So we can go on and test those real quick here, I guess. Yeah, 820. Okay. Throws. I'm gonna test the error case. Throws error. I'll just type it out, I guess. Whoops. Kanye rest could not be reached. So that's what the error should say. So that reformatted this automatically. The prettier. Okay. Just by the way, fake failed response. Call that. This doesn't matter. And the status will not be 200. Maybe we'll call it 500 or something. Call it that, expect, but we don't, of course, we're not expecting it to return the quote. We're really just expecting, we'll wrap this in a try catch, actually. If this was not catching it, we could straight up use Jest's to throw error, but since it's catching it, we need to actually test that. Also, I'm going to comment out this console error. Otherwise, that will show up here in the terminal in the test. So we're just going to do, so the try is going to have await get Kanye quote, catch error, and then we're going to expect the error, this might complain, to be Kanye, should be this. Kanye rest could not be reached. So, okay. something there. Oh, there we go. Just missing the block. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so the linting is complaining about this, so I'm just gonna disable that for this file. um, ESLint disable Jest no conditional expect. You probably shouldn't be doing this, but in the interest of time here, just gonna do this. So that passed, so that's good. So it threw this error when it was past status 500. It was basically status was not 200. So that's what we were testing there. Um, Ideally, we'd test this case and this case as well. Um, Now we're gonna test this case now, see if it returns that, and then that'll be the end. But ideally you'd test every case, or possibly you could see that some of these cases are redundant, and so there's the cleaner code thing where you can just remove the redundant conditional branches there. So we're actually gonna call this it. What do you think? It returns placeholder, where the placeholder is this. So data, I'm going to test this case where the length is below 1, or this is 0 pretty much, and this is 0 length. Status 200. I don't want that to fail up above it. And then we will, I guess we can rename this just for readability purposes. But okay, now I'm just going to copy this because I don't need all this. Okay, I'm back. There we go. Okay. So we're going to expect that to be placeholder. So that should pass here, and that'll be pretty much the end of this workshop. Sorry for the length, but you know. I haven't checked Discord. Yeah, right? ESLint, not good. Okay, so any questions? I guess I'll move back to the slides here. This code will be available on GitHub, so you can review it after if you miss something, or you just want to look through it again. But yeah, sorry, if we refresh this, there we go. We covered all these cases in the Istanbul coverage reporting, so that's good. That's in this folder, just to reiterate that. Yeah, so basically, any questions? Moving, if anybody's still here. Also, feel free to talk and voice chat it on Discord if you're on Discord. Oh yeah, okay, so it seems like there are no questions. So I will put this up on GitHub. So if anybody wants to review it. So that's nice. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry for all the mic troubles.